there are two expressions that I find problematic. One is the notion of moral bankruptcy, and the other one is the notion of whataboutism. Now, whataboutism is rather a modern concept or creation where some individual who is accused of bad nefarious behavior usually points out finger at somebody else who has done similar or worse behavior and uses it as a defense, saying, what about this other individual? And it's done individually. It's also done by those who are defending that person, pointing fingers at somebody else and saying, what about? And certainly moral bankruptcy in it of itself could be understood, except humans and all of us, we have very different ways of defining what morality is, and we have a very different way of defining what bankruptcy is, right? Absent morals. And I was thinking about it within the context of why is it so difficult for people to put those things together and be able to come to a very simple realization. For example, Epstein, right? Epstein was a pedophiliac and a problematic human being for 40 years, or give or take, right? It's not like he was accidentally one time when he was 60 years old decided to do those bad stuff. No, he's been doing it for 40 years. How many thousand different people has he come into contact with? How many people decided to look the other way? How many house workers have seen those little children going in and out? How many drivers facilitated what took place? How many pilots flew the Lolita Express? How many individuals were precisely, specifically in contact with him when he was engaging in those creepy, crappy stuff, right? What about them, right? And the response is, well, we need to hold somebody else responsible. Well, not what about them doesn't work, because whataboutism here would be definitively demonstrative of the moral bankruptcy that each and every one of those individuals has, and all those who are around them. Because when people are talking about bad behavior, we cannot and we ought not to allow people get away with it, because when we do, that's when we have instances such as Epstein. And as of right now, not a single one of his bodyguards, not a single one of his house workers, not a single one of those people who procured and provided and facilitated has been held accountable. And certainly, interestingly enough, the second one I want to talk a little bit about is this notion of both moral bankruptcy within the context of political behavior. Trump and Clinton. Well, I don't know about Trump and morality, but he knows a lot about bankruptcy. But even more so, all of the defenders are saying, well, wait a second, his expression when he's a 70 years old person about grabbing people is definitively not as bad as Clinton traveling with the same Epstein, right? Like, it doesn't matter. And this notion of comparative, wait a second, even if all things being correct, even if the accusations against Clinton are correct, that doesn't dismiss the responsibility of speaking like a decent human being about other individuals and human beings, right? And especially when it's done by a grown-up, being able to hold people accountable for it demonstrates that some people are, well, that's not that important. Of course it's important. If we're at the dinner table and somebody talks like Trump, you wouldn't want that person at your dinner table, or you have a significant problem. Certainly, of course, those who are defending Clinton are pointing fingers at Trump are forgetting, wait a second, what about all of those individuals who were engaged in specifically championing, well, I don't know, behavior of somebody like Harvey Weinstein? Because he has been grabbing people and hurting people, certainly for much longer than he finally went to jail for. And interestingly enough, again, all of the groups of people who've been around that individual are going to walk away as if they are not responsible. And the harsh reality of this is that we need to simply, just snap back and simplify and let ourselves understand a very simple thing, that in this world of subjective actions, you, us, we, they, them, all of us will remain in moral bankruptcy and continuously pointing fingers and claiming whataboutism, because simply we are unable to step away and say, look, this is the behavior that you ought not to do, and I don't care who you are, and I don't care who else has done it, and I don't care who else has gotten away with it. It stops now. we no longer do that, and you will no longer do that, and you will no longer speak like that, and you will be held accountable for your actions. And until we do that, we will still be plagued by individuals such as Epstein and Harvey Weinstein.